So when season 2 of Netflix's Heartstopper came out, I made a short little reel to celebrate the fact that it included an openly aro ace character, Isaac.
Oh, I have a medical condition, all right. It's called caring too much, and it's incurable!
Now, I will admit I had not seen Heartstopper Season 2, nor have I still seen Heartstopper Season 2, because I am trying to finish a book and also starting my first semester, returning to school after a very, very long time. So I have not really had a whole lot of room for any binge watching anything, really. But I had anticipated a lot of positive response to this short little video and this aro ace representation on TV. And for the most part, I did get that. Many people responded agreeing. They were very happy about Isaac being aro ace and having this representation on a major TV show. But, and there is always a but not everyone felt that way. There were also a large number of folks who felt disappointed by this representation on Heartstopper. They had high expectations for this creator, for this show, for this world, and those expectations weren't met by what they got. And they gave a lot of different reasons why, but the thing that unified all those responses was, yeah, this is aro ace representation, but it's not quite what I was looking for. So that got me curious, and I asked my followers on Instagram what they thought was missing in aro ace representation and what they wanted to see out of aro ace characters in different kinds of media. And let me tell you, they had a lot of opinions. So let's talk about those opinions of what's missing in aro and ace representation and talk a little bit about what that means about representation overall. So representation is a really big deal. Before we dive in though, I'm going to let other Cody tell you about another big deal. Online privacy is a big deal to me, and that's why I use Atlas VPN. Not only do they keep your searches private, but Atlas VPN stops ads and malware and helps get you some of the best deals while shopping online. And right now you can get their big deal. 3 years of Atlas VPN Premium for just $183 a month plus 3 extra months. So you can protect your privacy and get all the benefits of Atlas VPN by just clicking the link in the description. So Atlas VPN doesn't just protect my privacy, it also lets me access TV shows and movies that are only available in other parts of the world. So I'm not just limited to my geographic area. If it's streaming somewhere in the world, it can be streaming on my devices. So if protecting your privacy and having access to your favorite content is a big deal to you, take advantage of Atlas VPN's big deal. 3 years of Atlas VPN Premium for just $183 a month plus 3 extra months. They're the best VPN on the market, so take advantage of this big deal because it's only around for a limited time. Just click the link in the description. So one of the big ideas that people rallied around when responding to what's missing in ace and aro rep is a desire to see a wider spectrum of experiences in aceness and aro-ness depicted in media characters. I would like to see the difference between aro and ace actually represented, like characters who are aro and not ace, or ace and not aro. I would love to see more labels under the asexual spectrum be used, like demi, gray, fray. I think it's important to show the whole spectrum. As for aro, I think it just needs to be acknowledged more because I can only think of one canon aro character off the top of my head. But also show the spectrum of ace aro experience, not just the textbook examples or black and white depictions. So people who like some sex or romance, talk of the circumstances that might happen in, as well as showing those who don't want sex or romance. I would also like to see aspec characters. There's a severe lack of demi or gray identities, and any other identity on the ace and aro spectrum is completely non-existent. We are at the very infancy of seeing Ace and Arrow characters being represented in big mainstream media projects. So these depictions have to meet people, the most people, where they are, which, unfortunately, is square one, not knowing a thing about Ace or Arrow, folks. So these characters aren't going to be able to reflect the complexity and nuance of our community and experience. They aren't going to be able to show the intricacies of our identities. These characters have to teach people the basics. So the basics are what we're getting. Now, look, that's not to say that all Ace and Arrow characters that exist out there are at this level. There are a lot of interesting, nuanced characters that are out there, but they're in smaller indie projects that are harder to find, that you got to go looking for. And those are mostly being made, coincidentally or not coincidentally, by Ace and Arrow creators. But while they're great, they're not going to be the ones that we're going to see getting on big streamers or big movies anytime soon. I mean, not yet, anyway. So the second big area that people wanted to see improved in Ace and Arrow representation is the depiction of our relationships. They want to see relationships. They want to see Ace and Arrow people engaging in all the different ways that we do engage with other human beings in the world. Because, we do that sometimes. I want to see Ace Spec characters in relationships where it's not the whole story, but not ignored either. I want to see Ace people who also have romantic relationships and only romantic relationships. I want to see explorations of different, more creative types of relationships like QPR or parenting Arrow Ace people. I want to see QPRs that are actually explicitly discussed, explained, acknowledged in some way. I would love to see more creative relationships, platonic life partners, co-parenting friends, more ways that Aces and Arrows create families and lifelong relationships. It would be helpful to see more than just the kinds of relationships we see everywhere. The idea that friendships could be of equal value to romantic relationships and that all kinds of loving relationships are possible would be really encouraging to see in media. I think one of the most powerful things about Ace and Arrow experience is the way in which it reimagines what relationships can do, be, and how they can be organized in our lives. So I agree with this one fully. I think it is going to be such a wonderful thing for Ace and Arrow representation to show the different ways in which we can build and construct relationships. And not just including Ace and Arrow people in romantic relationships, but also showing how we build them outside of those amatonormative, heteronormative, allonormative molds. We can build intentional families. We can build queer platonic relationships. We can build friendship networks that are centered and prioritized in a person's life. There are many ways within which we can build human networks as Ace and Arrow people that could be instructive and useful for everyone to see. I mean, but don't think you're going to get that anytime soon. Not to be a downer, but come on. And finally, they want to see diversity. They want to see a wider range of Ace and Arrow characters being depicted, who are coming from a variety of backgrounds, who are at a variety of different places in their lives, and who are bringing more than just a singular monolithic experience to the screen, page, or whatever. More variety of Ace stories, especially beyond Discovery. It'd be nice to have glimpses of what things could be like or things to look forward to beyond the all too relatable stories of discovery and realization, which we still need more of. This is an and, not an or. And beyond the whole coming in, coming out narrative, showing the parts where being Arrow Ace entails grieving and unlearning, but also queer joy in a way that is not less than allo love. Characters that are explicitly Arrow Ace, but who are not reduced to it, with a wholly fleshed out personality and dreams, goals, qualities of their own. I also rarely see any mention of gray spec and demi-spec folks, older folks, men, POC, and ace and arrow folks whose arrow aceness are not the focal point of the story. Aces and arrows who are also gay, imspec, or otherwise angled oriented. Basically anything but teenager discovering their arrow ace and have always known they were different trademark. Arrow ace characters who are also POC and trans non-binary. I'd love to see older people and or parents realizing their arrow ace. Older people, you say? Ding. Of course, diverse representations of ace and arrow folks is an incredibly important thing to have. On the one hand, it helps ace and arrow folks see themselves reflected more completely. We are a very diverse community of people. We are not monolithic in any kind of way, even though sometimes the depictions that are in the world do sort of lean in that direction. We're a community made up of all kinds of people from all walks of life and all experiences. To be able to see that reflected in media that is about us and our lives would be very fulfilling. It also serves another purpose. For those folks who don't quite know they are ace or arrow yet, to be able to look into the world and see diverse representations tells them, no matter who they are, yes, you have a place in this community too. Yes, this can mean you as well. More diverse representations of ace and arrow folks combat all of the stereotypes that exist about who is ace or arrow. I can attest to experiencing this very personally. I didn't come out until I was 41. I did not see representations of 41-year-old people who look like me being ace anywhere in the world. I now know that it has something to do with me, but I wasn't seeing anything in the world that was confirming it had something to do with me. And more diverse figures in ace and arrow representation will help more people feel like being ace or arrow has something deeply to do with them. So, well, of course, all of the answers that I got from folks on that Instagram post were wonderful about what's missing in ace and arrow representation. There was one thing that I thought was missing from the answers. What I think is missing from ace and arrow representation is more ace and arrow people creating that representation. When we talk about representation, I often feel like we use that word to mean a lot of different things. And I think it's more instructive to take that big word, representation, and break it into two ideas, depiction and representation. So depiction is what we've been talking about. It's ace and arrow characters simply being in bits of media for us to see. Sometimes they're made by ace and arrow folks, sometimes they're not. But they generally, as depiction, don't do the three things that we've talked about in this video. They don't show the spectrum of experience that exists in our community. They don't really show us the relationships that are possible within our experience, and they tend to not be very diverse and show all the possibles of who could be in this particular community. Now look, depiction is good. It is good to see ace and arrow characters in media. Most of the time. The house episode. But just because those characters are there doesn't mean that they are existing in a way that exerts any power. Depiction, in many ways, reinforces the structures of marginalization that exist for the community they're depicting. Now, representation does something else. Representation still includes us in the stories that we are watching or reading, but they are made by ace and arrow people. And they're making sure that ace and arrow people are embodying those stories. And they're making sure that ace and arrow people are part of the decision making that happens around those stories. And they're making sure that those characters are in the center of stories, not on the margins. Representation is textured. It is not one-dimensional. And instead of reinforcing structures of marginalization, representation answers it. You know, representation does what being out does. It asserts our claim to space. It asserts our claim to power. So that's why the best representation for me is always actual ace people in the world doing things. Like, I think we can get excited all day, and we absolutely should, about Ace and Arrow characters showing up in things. But the most impact that ever happens for Ace and Arrow representation is actually seeing Ace people stand up and say, "Hi, I'm Ace and I'm Arrow and I am here, and this is what my life looks like." You know, we as ourselves can do so much more to show the world the spectrum of our experiences, the kinds of relationships we can build, and the diversity of who we are better than anything that can be shown in a book or a movie or a TV show. We will always be the best representation for Ace and Arrow lives that exist. And, you know, very honestly, it's why I'm on the YouTube and I'm old enough to be your dad. Represent.